Revenge with Karen.
I was on my knees behind the server rack at 3:17 a.m., wrist deep in a rat's nest of cables, when I heard one of the senior engineers fart and giggle in his sleep on the beanbag chair outside the break room. That was the exact moment I realized I could reprogram half the backend in less time than it took these guys to microwave their gains-only protein burritos. But I just kept untangling the Cat 6 like a good little night assistant. Technically, my title was Network Operations Night Support Assistant. Realistically, I was a glorified janitor with pseudo access. My duties included replacing HDMI cords for guys who thought TikTok hacks were productivity tools, ordering caffeine drinks so intense they probably violated Geneva Conventions, and making sure nobody tripped over Roomba and sued the firm. Oh, babysitting our server clusters, while the real engineers slept off their startup stress and vape highs. The place smelled like ramen and ego. Every corner was filled with startup energy, whiteboards full of buzzwords, standing desks cluttered with brainstorming snacks, some poor intern always asleep under a desk with an AirPod half hanging out. I was the only one there after midnight 5 days a week. Not because I was paid well. Not because they needed me. Because I needed the job. Or, to be more honest, I needed the silence. See, I don't exactly fit their mold. They never asked where I went to school, probably assuming it was nowhere state. No one wondered why I could SSH into the mainframe blindfolded, or why I always brought my own mechanical keyboard. That's because the second you walk in with a mop in one hand and a backup drive in the other, you become part of the wallpaper. But wallpaper sees everything, includes the $150 million federal contract plastered on the glass wall of Conference Room 4. A system redesigned for a government infrastructure node. Don't worry, I won't bore you with the jargon. Let's just say, if this thing broke, there were backup generators in 3 states that wouldn't kick in when they were supposed to. And guess who's been watching the whole chaotic build like a night janitor with a photographic memory? Yours truly. For 8 months, I watched the firm scramble. Missed deadlines, late-night pizza-fueled bug hunts, egos clashing louder than the cable ties snapping under pressure. I knew every team member's tells. When Raj scratched his beard, he'd just broken something. When Sarah locked her monitor, she'd probably rage-purchased another SAW S plugin we didn't need. Me, I just kept scanning logs and restocking peanut butter pretzels. Oh, and I checked backup diffs for fun. By the way, if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing with your life? Hit the button, like the story. It's the only thing keeping the coffee machine running and the narrator from switching to interpretive dance. Anyway, by the time fall rolled in and the contractor's deadline loomed like a guillotine, the panic started showing. They threw more engineers at the problem. They locked themselves in conference rooms. They wiped entire databases by mistake, twice. I watched the logs flare red like Christmas came early. And still, no one asked me a damn thing, but I knew. I knew the heartbeat of that system better than anyone. And I knew something was coming, something big. It was a Thursday or maybe Friday, depending on how you define day when you live under fluorescent lights and snack machine glow. Around 2:30 a.m., I wandered into conference room 4 looking for a chair that wasn't covered in gamer sweat or kombucha rings. Instead, I found a battlefield. The whiteboard looked like it had been attacked by a schizophrenic algebra professor. Equations, flowcharts, arrows to nowhere, all scribbled in 5 different markers like a crime scene from a math cult. Beneath it, scattered post-its like fallen leaves, coffee cups breeding fruit flies, and the lingering stench of stale Red Bull and ego. And silence. That room was never silent. Turns out, the full engineering fleet, 45 of them, staged a last-ditch overnight war against a critical bug. A timing glitch in the handoff protocol. Something small but catastrophic. One misplaced sequence, and the whole update stalled. System refused to acknowledge remote commands in live failover simulations. It was like having a fire alarm that worked perfectly, except when there was a fire. They'd left in a defeated herd around 1:45, I guessed, judging by the badge logs and the still warm chairs. Probably went to drown their shame in IPA and group therapy over Slack. I should have just rolled my eyes, grabbed the chair, and gone back to my backup check. Instead, I stood there staring at the chaos on the board. That's when it hit me, the recursive call. They'd looped a conditional check too tightly, under a certain input size. It escalated into Stack Overflow territory. The kind of thing that didn't show up until late-stage integration testing. But once it did, total failure cascade. And they'd missed it, all of them. Missed it because they were overthinking it, because they were tired, because they'd never had to code with one eye on a time clock and the other on rent due. My fingers twitched. See, this is the part they don't teach you in comp sci, the emotional calculus of intervention. Do I fix it and risk the fallout? Do I say something and get laughed out of the building? Do I let them rot in their own arrogant stew and keep sipping my off-brand La Croix in the dark? I walked around the table slowly, trailing a finger across the open laptops, some still logged in, most blinking on lock screens. The code was still up on 3 terminals. They'd left it like a shrine to incompetence. I pulled up the error logs again just to be sure. Yep, line 238. There it was. Recursive loop on conditional input. Rookie mistake with $1,000,000 consequences. I felt my jaw tighten. I wasn't supposed to be here, not in this room, not in this conversation. I was supposed to be somewhere invisible, stacking boxes of charging cables or wiping lint off the server fans with company-issued microfiber. But here I was, with the answer, again, 10 lines. That's all it would take. 10 lines to redirect the async handoff, kill the overflow, and let the protocol breathe. 10 lines that every single overpaid genius had missed. Probably because none of them had ever built something from scratch with no budget and a broken keyboard. They'd all been too busy name-dropping conferences and arguing over light mode vs dark mode. My heart was pounding, not with fear, with adrenaline, with clarity. This wasn't the first time I'd seen something broken in this company, but it might be the last time I stayed quiet. I sat down at the far corner terminal, machine 12, the one they all hated because the spacebar sticks like it's chewing gum and the mouse smells faintly like Cheeto fingers. Perfect. Low profile, just me and a glowing IDE in the witching hour. I pulled up the script, fingers hovering, and then I started typing. 10 lines, that's all it took. Clean, elegant. A redirect to a secondary thread that let the handoff breathe before it hit the recursive check, wrapped the offending function in an async wrapper, tweaked the timeout window, and added a fail-safe condition that any intern would have written if they weren't too busy trying to impress Sarah with their deep knowledge of containerization. It was obvious after you saw it. After the 10th line, I sat back. The room was dead quiet. No applause, no gasps. Just the hum of the AC pushing recycled hope through dusty vents. I didn't add my name. I didn't leave a footprint. Just a sticky note by the console. Check async handoff. That's it. I stood, grabbed my jacket off the back of a beanbag chair, and left. Outside, the sky was still dark, streetlights casting weird shadows off our building's glass facade. I walked to the bus stop like I always do, hands in pockets, eyes unfocused, thinking about nothing and everything. No one texted me, no one called. I wasn't on Slack. I was the ghost again, the phantom janitor, off-brand angel in a hoodie. By the time I crawled into bed, it was just past 4 a.m. I pulled the blanket over my head and let the exhaustion wrap around me like a weighted blanket made of secrets. I didn't sleep. I just waited for the world to catch up. And boy, did it. By 9:42 a.m., Slack was on fire. Omf gets fixed. Pushed to prod, no issues. Did someone patch it overnight? Elmau must have been the code gods showing mercy. Got to the office a little after noon, coffee in hand, bagel in mouth, badge swipe like always. Nobody noticed. The place was buzzing like someone had handed out stock options and free cocaine. People were high on their own success. That whiteboard erased, wiped clean like none of the panic ever happened. Celebration muffins in the break room. Sarah did a tick-tock. I wish I was kidding. And there in the main bullpen stood the CTO, Darren. Gray Patagonia vest, permanent smirk, hair gelled like it was auditioning for a midlife crisis. He was holding court like Caesar after a war. Well, I had a hunch about the async call. Knew it had to be timing. Just needed someone to run diagnostics while I slept. My gut was right, as usual. They clapped. Raj slapped his back. Man, you're a machine. Someone yelled, beer o'clock starting early today. And I swear to God, they actually started a chant. And I just stood there, back near the printer, watching it unfold like a really bad sitcom that never got past the pilot episode. Not one of them asked who really fixed it. Not one of them checked the logs. Not one of them noticed that sticky note. I threw my bag under the desk, sat down, opened my monitoring terminal, and smiled faintly. I didn't need credit, not yet, because the code was live. The system was stable, and I had time. To watch them hoist themselves higher and higher on a ladder they didn't know I built. Time to see how far they'd fall when someone a lot higher up, finally started asking questions. By the time I logged in that evening, the system dashboard was greener than a Whole Foods juice aisle. No errors, no dropped packets, no "oh God, kill me now" alerts blinking in red, just smooth, surgical performance. Like it was always meant to work that way. The client noticed. Oh, they noticed. The first whisper came in over Slack around 5:30 p.m. Client emailed directly, said the patch exceeded expectations. By 6:15, the C-suite was in full panic turn party mode. The federal liaison had not only greenlit the deployment, but personally emailed the CEO, praising the elegant fix and proactive implementation. I bet Darren nearly pulled a groin muscle typing glad our team pulled together in his reply. Then came the invite. Emergency Executive Sync 6:45 p.m. boardroom, a translation. Let's figure out how to spin this miracle into a marketing orgy before the client sobers up. I wasn't invited, of course. I was too busy organizing coaxial cables, by length and color, in the supply closet, like a tech librarian no one talks to. You can hear everything through the vents in this building. Designed by an architect who apparently thought HVAC ducts should double as corporate espionage tunnels. From my perch beside the Ethernet reel, I heard the words genius under pressure, breakthrough moment, need a hero face for the press release. Darren floated his name at least 3 times, each time with more chest puff and less self-awareness. I almost laughed out loud when someone suggested calling it the Vanguard Protocol. You'd think they cured cancer with a Post-it. But the laughter died when I felt a presence at the closet door. A knock. Tentative. It was Ethan, junior dev, newish, baby-faced, but not dumb. One of the few who ever said thank you when I replaced their cables without being asked. Hey, Rebecca, got a sec? I nodded, stepping aside. He walked in, shutting the door behind him like we were trading nuclear secrets between fiber spools. I was checking logs earlier. You know, curiosity and all that. Timeline of the fix didn't quite match what Darren said. Then I noticed your user ID logged into machine 12 around 2:30 a.m. His voice dropped. The terminal where the sticky note showed up. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then softly, was it you? I didn't answer with a monologue. I didn't launch into my resume. I just met his eyes and gave the smallest nod. 1 beat, 2. His mouth opened slightly like he wanted to say something profound, then closed again. Damn, he whispered. That's wow. I could see the calculation flickering behind his eyes. Not the malicious kind. The holy shit, the janitor saved the rocket ship kind. Don't worry, he said finally. I won't say anything. Not unless you want me to. You should get the credit. I get it. He left with a dazed look like he'd just seen Bigfoot submitting bug reports. Back upstairs, things were shifting. I could feel it. Darren was nervous. It started with subtle things, him hovering near the logs console more often, checking access histories, muttering to himself about unauthorized input and sandbox discrepancies. The bravado was still there, but it had a hitch now, kind of hitch that comes when you realize your golden boy narrative might have termites. He started asking around, quietly, then not so quietly. Anyone touch the pipeline overnight? Anyone? No one fessed up. Not yet, but he was sniffing the air. And I knew Darren, he didn't like not knowing. Especially not when the CEO had just promised him stage time at the quarterly town hall. His hands were already shaking, just didn't know if it was caffeine or fear. By Monday morning, the air in the office was different, tighter, like static before a thunderstorm. No celebratory muffins, no beer o'clock chants, just keyboards clacking like nervous teeth and engineers pretending they weren't glancing sideways at the CTO every 5 seconds, because Darren wasn't smiling anymore. The email started around 9 a.m. Please forward all overnight access logs, a Slack ping from the director of infrastructure, who was in the mainframe between 2-4 a.m. Thursday night, then came the bomb, an emergency audit request from the CEO's office. Not just who worked the problem, who touched it. When the access logs came back, there it was in black and white. Rebecca R. Pseudo, access time, 02-3741, machine ID, 12, I'd signed in with elevated privileges. I hadn't even tried to hide it. Would I? No one ever looked. I was the ghost in the wires. Until now. Darren was pacing the floor like a cornered coyote, muttering about unauthorized script edits and chain of command. But even his smarm couldn't slow the inevitable, because the CEO had seen the logs too. A full staff meeting was called. No agenda, no snacks. Just a room full of engineers, marketers, dev leads, and Darren, standing near the screen like a man watching his own autopsy. CEO Stephen strode in 10 minutes late, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, jaw tight. He didn't even sit down. He stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, and said one sentence. Who fixed the protocol? Silence. The kind of silence you could throw a rock through and hear it whistle. Everyone glanced at Darren. He cleared his throat but said nothing. Stephen scanned the room like a disappointed dad who found a vape pen in the laundry. I want names. I want truth, not branding, not spin. Who pushed the code that saved this contract? More silence. And then Ethan cracked. He raised a shaky hand. It wasn't me, but I know who did it. The CTO shot him a look that could curdle milk. Ethan swallowed and turned his head slowly toward me. All eyes followed. Even the intern stopped pretending to type. I stood up, calm, no drama, no speech. Just raised my chin slightly. I did. It hung there. Fragile sentence, floating in a room that didn't know what to do with it. Then it started. Laughter. Not the good kind, not the relieved kind, the mean kind. The disbelieving, backslapping, oh, she thinks she's people kind. Someone snorted, wait, like Rebecca? Darren gave a dry little chuckle. Okay, let's be serious now. I think Ethan's confused. But Stephen didn't laugh. He didn't move. He stared at me. Then at Darren, Rebecca. Accessed machine 12 at 2:37 a.m. I nodded. Yes, you pushed code to the async handoff? Yes, he looked back at Darren. And Darren, sweating now, opened his mouth to protest. But then something happened. His face changed. The moment hit him like a slap. His smirk fell off like cheap paint. Her. He croaked, eyes suddenly wide. Stephen narrowed his gaze. You're sure it was her? No one moved. No one breathed. Yes, I said again. And in that moment, after stopped. Because someone, maybe it was Ethan, maybe it was the silence, finally pulled up the diff log on the big screen. There they were, 10 lines, signed by me. And everything got very, very quiet. 3 years ago, I walked into the same glass-walled building in the same fraying blazer I still wore on chilly nights. I had printed out my resume on actual paper, MIT at the top, summa cum laude, dual major in computer science and applied mathematics, and a killer list of projects I'd built, while half of Silicon Valley was still arguing about crypto. I sat in a beige conference room across from Darren, the CTO, while he skimmed my resume like it was a diner menu. He never looked me in the eye, asked maybe 2 real questions, spent more time adjusting his Patagonia vest than listening to anything I said. At one point, he even paused to answer a text and laughed, actually laughed. I explained a load balancing protocol I'd built during my internship at the DoD. I didn't get a callback, no follow-up, no thanks but no thanks. Just a silence that stretched for weeks until I finally got the automated "we've decided to move forward with other candidates" email. Then 2 weeks later, I saw the job reposted. Same description, same salary range, but with a new line added, must be a culture fit. I let it go. I needed work. I swallowed the pride, shaved off the top half of my resume, and reapplied for night assistant role. No MIT mention, just tech support experience and data center familiarity. I got the job in a day. Now, standing in that conference room, eyes on me, silence thick as drywall, I could feel it circling back. And I wasn't the only one connecting the dots. Because after the CEO walked out of the room, face unreadable, saying only I need to speak with legal, things started unraveling fast. It started with a whisper from someone in finance, then a forwarded email, then another, and then it dropped into my lap, an internal thread from 3 years ago, forwarded anonymously, labeled CTO candidate review red flag, from Darren. There it was in his words, Rebecca L., MIT grad, top grades, military adjacent experience. But get this, she's applying for junior dev. Looks desperate. Might be one of those paper genius, real-life awkward types. I mean, who applies to this with credentials like that? Either burned out or crazy. I'm skipping. Not a culture fit. Let's move on. And below that, another gem replied to appear. MIT? Then why is she working night shift? Maybe she likes being a ghost. I sat in my chair, reading those words, calm as a surgeon before the first cut. Around me, engineers murmured. Some turned away. 1 or 2 glanced at Darren with the kind of look you reserve for people who accidentally run over your dog and then lie about it. By noon, the board had been notified. At 12:43 p.m., a meeting was called between legal, HR, the CEO, and Darren. The glass door closed. Shades drawn. You could still hear Darren's voice rising behind the glass like a tea kettle about to blow. I didn't know she was that capable. She never said anything. She's the night assistant. But it didn't matter anymore. The logs told the story. Who accessed what? Who changed the code? Who saved the contract? And who tried to erase the person who did it? I didn't say a word in my defense. I didn't need to. All I had to do was sit there, folding Ethernet cables in perfect loops, while the empire started to crumble behind its own polished windows. The next day, the office was silent. Not the peaceful kind. It was tension-charged, bubble-wrapped silence. Like everyone was waiting for a bomb to either detonate or get quietly wheeled out in a padded briefcase. No one dared say Darren's name. His office sat dark, door half-cracked like a mouth frozen mid-confession. Rumor was, he'd been escorted out around midnight, red-eyed and stammering about intent versus outcome. No one cried. By lunchtime, Stephen, the CEO, walked straight past the product pod, bypassed the main floor, came directly to me. No assistant, no speech, no warning. Just him in a black jacket and weary eyes, holding a plain manila folder and a coffee. He didn't ask me to come with him. He sat across from me at the break room table while I stirred a cup of instant oatmeal I didn't plan on eating. He set the folder down. "I want to offer you a promotion," he said. "Name your role, lead engineer, VP of Ops. Hell, you want my job. I'll train you myself." I blinked once. Let the offer settle like dust on a polished desk. I looked at the folder. My name on the tab. Inside, I'm sure, was some shiny new title wrapped in a salary that made interns weep and free stock options to sweeten the shame. But I didn't reach for it. Instead, I took a breath and said, "Thank you, I mean it." But no, Stephen raised an eyebrow, not angry, just confused. "I've already filed paperwork," I said, "last month. LLC, Ein, domain, the whole thing. I call it Night Thread Systems. Quiet code, clean results." He smiled despite himself. "Night Thread, that's clever." I nodded. "It's my own now. No boardroom politics, no posturing, just problems and solutions." He leaned back in the chair, folding his arms. "You don't want recognition?" "I didn't do it for recognition," I said quietly. "I did it because it needed doing." He nodded slowly, almost sadly. He understood something he wished he'd seen 3 years ago. "You know," he said, voice lower now, "there's a whole lot of Darrens out there. Loud guys with fragile skin who think culture fit means don't make me feel dumb. I think I owe you an apology." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything. I knew what I signed up for. I just didn't expect to finish the job for them." A beat passed. "Still," he said, tapping the folder, "if you ever want back in, no titles." "Oh, nonsense, my door's open." I gave a faint smile. "Appreciate it. But I think I've already walked through the one I built myself. And that was that. No champagne corks, no slow clap, no LinkedIn announcement bathed in fake humility. Just a plain folder left on a plastic table next to a half-eaten oatmeal cup and a woman in a hoodie who finally chose her work over their approval. Later that day, someone tried to clear my badge access by mistake. I smiled and waved it off. They could lock the doors all they wanted. I wasn't going back in. It started with a knock on my apartment door at 7:11 a.m., which was exactly 19 minutes before my alarm and therefore grounds for violence in most jurisdictions. I opened it in a bathrobe with one sock on and a granola bar in my mouth, expecting a delivery guy or maybe the landlord asking about the smoke detector I'd accidentally disabled. Instead, it was a courier. Plain black cap, government badge, envelope in hand. "Rebecca Langford?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Message from the Department of Energy." That woke me up faster than a triple shot of espresso. Inside the envelope, a sealed letter. Personal. Hand-signed by the project director overseeing the very same $150 million federal infrastructure contract our firm had nearly botched. Only it wasn't addressed to the company. It was addressed to me. The letter was short, 4 paragraphs. The first thanked me for the critical intervention. The second acknowledged my role in resolving a system failure with precision and integrity. The third included an invitation to present at a closed-door federal oversight panel as the original author of the deployed fix. And the fourth made my breath catch. "We understand you are no longer affiliated with your previous employer. Would be honored to consider Night Thread Systems as a future vendor, pending clearance." My hands trembled a little, not with fear, with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride, not the showy kind, not the performative, LinkedIn-optimized virtue signaling people do when they hit publish on their mediocrity. Real pride, quiet, rooted, earned. By noon, the news had leaked. A government contract manager, bless his gossipy little heart, ordered a screen grab to a procurement group chat which promptly found its way to half our old engineering team via Telegram. By 2 p.m., my inbox was a war zone. Some emails were congratulatory, others were less so. A few engineers I used to restock Red Bulls for wrote me like I'd personally taken a dump on their diplomas. Accusations flew. You made us look stupid. You should have said something sooner. This isn't how teamwork works. One even wrote, enjoy your 15 minutes. But don't pretend you did this alone. To which I didn't reply, because he was right. I didn't do it alone. I did it while they watched. Still, not everyone was bitter. A few reached out genuinely, disillusioned with the company, burned by the fallout. Turns out when you pull the CTO's curtain back and find a snake oil salesman running the show, some folks reevaluate their loyalties. One dev asked if I was hiring. Another offered to contract. A third just said, I believe you saved the damn thing. And I'm sorry I laughed. As for Darren, official statement said he was placed on indefinite leave pending internal review. Unofficially, someone saw him yelling into his Bluetooth in the parking garage 2 days later before peeling out in his Tesla like a man late for his own dignity. Night Thread Systems went live quietly. No party, no launch video. Just a repo, a GitHub page, a line in the footer, silent code. Loud results. That night, I sat on the balcony with my laptop, sipping lukewarm tea, watching the city breathe. And for the first time in years, I let myself breathe too. The ballroom at the DC. Marriott hummed with the low, anxious buzz of bureaucrats, tech execs, and consultants in varying shades of beige. Government Tech Innovation Summit, an annual pageant of jargon, recycled coffee breath, and last-minute badge reprints. I stood near the back of the main floor, watching the panels cycle through. Blockchain and logistics, AI in agriculture, predictive modeling for grid failures. All buzzwords, all noise, until it was my turn. I stepped up to the podium in a black button-down and dark jeans, no blazer, no startup hoodie, no founder energy. Just me and the truth. Screen behind me lit up with the title slide, The Invisible Problem Solver, What Happens When You Ignore Quiet Talent. There were no special effects, no laser pointers or TED talk pacing. I just told the story, not my whole life, just the 10 lines, the bug, the night, the silence. I didn't name the company, didn't need to. Everyone in that room already knew. I showed the before and after logs, walked through the recursive loop like I was explaining it to someone's grandmother. I talked about what happens when leadership filters resumes by culture, fit instead of competence. What happens when you mistake silence for weakness? And then I ended with this. Sometimes the problem isn't the bug, it's the blind spot. The code can't see itself from inside, but someone can, someone who's watching, someone you've walked past 100 times. Applause. Not thunderous, not standing ovation level. Just steady, real, a few nods from senior officials, a couple of engineers tapping their phones with suddenly thoughtful faces. And then I stepped off the stage. That's when I saw him, Stephen, CEO Stephen, crisp as ever in a charcoal suit, talking to a due liaison until he turned his head and our eyes locked. For a beat, he just stood there, blinking like he wasn't sure if I was real. Then he smiled. Not fake, not corporate, just human. He gave me a small nod, the kind people reserve for things they can't undo but are finally ready to admit. Next to me stood the federal project lead, grinning. That talk should be mandatory for every tech recruiter in America, she said. We'll be reaching out this week. I thanked her, I meant it. Then I felt a shift behind me. The air thickened, and there he was, Darren, CTO Emeritus. Or, as the company now politely phrased it, former strategic advisor. No name badge, no entourage. Just him in a wrinkled jacket, eyes ringed with fatigue and whatever medication shame requires. He stepped forward, hesitated, then said, just above a whisper, you destroyed me. I looked at him, really looked. Hair thinner, posture wilted. The man who once laughed when I said I could fix something now stood before me like a ghost who'd just read his own tombstone. And I smiled, not cruelly, not sweetly, just plainly. No, I said. You did that when you ignored 10 lines of code and the woman who wrote them. He didn't reply, just stood there, stunned into a silence I'd known intimately. I turned, walked away, and didn't look back. No confetti, no dramatic music, just the quiet sound of footsteps moving forward, mine. And if anyone had followed close enough, they might have heard me whisper one last line under my breath, fixed it. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.